Welcome back to Light Talk, where everyday people can share their own unique spiritual journey stories. If you have a story and you would like to share it, email lighttalk423@gmail.com. And while you're at it, click on the like, share, and subscribe buttons down below. Well, let's welcome our guest today. She's going to have some fantastic stories for us. So we are going to just jump right in. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. So, hi, Dina. My name is Jolie Roy. I live in Chicago, Illinois, and I help people get over terrible times so that they can get back to their lives. But some of the things that I've been through in the past have taught me that this is where I'm supposed to be. So, I want to talk about several maybe past life experiences that I've had and also dreams that I've had and important dreams that I've had. So back in 1985, my mother passed away. She was 74 years old and she did not believe in the paranormal, but I have always thought there was something out there. And about a week after she passed away, I had this dream where she was like so confused. She said, "What happened to me?" And I just said, "Well, you died." And she said, "Okay." And that was that. And then a few weeks later, I had a dream about her where she was walking along this tunnel and I could see she was much younger. She was taller because my mom had rheumatoid arthritis. So she was a little bit shrunken. She was a very vital person. She worked till she was 70. She was a nurse and her RA did not stop her. She retired when she was 70 years old and then her health started to decline. So she was walking along in this beautiful, flowy kind of purple dress, which is my favorite color. And I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but watching her walk, I could see how tall she was because she was actually taller than me in real life when she was younger. She was about an inch taller than me in real life. And I kept saying, "Mom, wait up for me, wait up for me." And she was barefoot too, which I'd never seen her barefoot. And she kept walking. She kind of turned around and looked at me and she just kept walking. And I could see her kind of go at a curve into the light. And I think that particular dream told me that she was okay with where she was. Her spirit was always pretty young. And I think I saw her in a way that I'd never seen her before because she was 41 when I was born. So I never saw her as a young woman. Um, but it was an interesting dream. And I woke up from it not feeling bad, but just feeling really calm about it because I knew she was okay with where she was. And then probably a year or two later, I was divorced from my first husband and I was kind of on the fence about this guy I was dating. And I had this dream where she came and she was like, "You got to stop dating this guy because he is no good." And I was like, "Okay." And I stopped dating him. And I knew he was no good, but I think it was her confirmation. And she never interfered with my life, but that time she really did. So those are the only dreams I've had about my mom. And I have a feeling because I believe in this that she left about the time my daughter was 30 years old because she was with my daughter for a long time. And my daughter was 13 when she died. And when my daughter got married at 30, my mother was not around anymore. And they were very, very close. So my daughter mentioned that my mom wasn't there with her anymore. And I said, "Well, maybe she figured that you've got somebody, you're on your own." Um, and she hasn't appeared since. So I'm thinking that my mom went on and came into another family because I believe that the families that we come into, we choose those to either learn a lesson from or teach a lesson to. So I think that that's probably where my mom is. So, and I'm also an energy worker. And I've said that I believe in the paranormal and I believe in the fact that we are all connected energetically. And years ago in the year 2000, I met a gentleman who was a Reiki master. And I was taking Tai Chi at the time, and he told me about Reiki and how it worked. And he looked at me one day and he says, "I think that your hands are made for healing." And he said, "I think you should learn to be a Reiki practitioner." And I was like, "Do I have to teach it?" Because I didn't want to teach anybody. He said, "No, you can get to a level 2, you can become a Reiki practitioner." So I did, but this is also a gentleman who um, was like Horus, the god Horus, who helped people into the afterlife. He did that from time to time as we were in groups, and he would excuse himself, go sit in a corner for half an hour and help somebody pass over. So he and I used to have a lot of conversations about this. And one night he said, I think we need to talk about a past life that you and I were both in. And
Oh,
I don't know if
wow.
you want to hear all of them, but there are three for sure that I can talk about.
Sure.
And
Let's
one
go it.
and
Let's
one
go for it.
is um yeah, yeah, he said, now think about this. And it was probably an hour and a half that we did this the first time. And I could see that we were both in Roman times and because of the togas, and we were in this giant marble building. And he said, what do you see? And I said, well, you're there because I could see his face. Even though it wasn't him, I knew it was him. And I was not a woman, I was a man in the Roman Senate. And he said, what's going on? And I said, well, you're in a crowd, but oh my God, you're actually being killed by some people because they don't agree with you or something. And it was very traumatic to watch this, but I could see it very, very clearly. And he and I had shared past lives together a few times, and that was the one that was the most vivid. And another
Wow.
one, yeah, I've always been fascinated by the Scottish Highlands, and I read novels about it and history about it, and I was always really involved in talking about it. I even went to Scotland with my current husband. We went to Edinburgh and Glasgow, and it was an amazing
Nice.
trip in the Highlands, and
Yeah.
you know, um, visited where the Loch Ness monster is supposed to be.
Mhm.
But that past life was during when the Highlanders were in clans, and I was the clan chieftain's daughter, and I was dating a gentleman at the time, and he was a man in the clan that I wanted to marry, but it wasn't working out. But my friend was also there, and that particular past life was, you meet people and you come together over and over again sometimes, and it's not because you're supposed to be together. He's not my soulmate. It was just lessons that we learn from each other over time. And if we don't learn the lesson, we keep coming back. So if I've been around since the Roman times, I guess I haven't learned my lesson yet, or maybe I haven't taught a lesson yet. I'm not sure how that goes. Um, and the third one is another friend of ours. He kept saying, it was during like the Southern, around the Civil War time in the South. And he says, who do you see? And I said, I see a housemaid. And he goes, look at it, look at your housemaid's face. And I was like, wow. And this woman was black, but it was the soul of a man that was a friend of ours who was white. And I thought, this is the strangest thing, but those are the three past lives that I remember. And it's been an interesting journey knowing that we exist in the past and we also exist in the present. And yeah, and there are dreams that tell us things too. Like when I was married to my first husband, I kept having dreams of getting stabbed or getting shot in the hips with arrows, and he was doing it. And it was about not being respected in my relationship. And I came to that realization. I had that dream a couple of times, and I realized that I needed to get out of the relationship. And um, that was an interesting analogy of what I was going through in that dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had a similar dream, but it was my boyfriend at the time. He died a couple times in my arms in dreams. Yeah,
Yeah, I know
it's
that.
kind of
I know
weird.
that when you have fears, like if you're afraid of drowning or you're afraid of being stabbed, it's possible that you died that way in a past life.
Mhm.
So I know that because I've read so much about that, and I've met people who have had that fear, and sometimes they'll go through energy work so that they can remove that fear.
Mhm.
And sometimes they'll go through energy work to remove ancestral trauma that they have, that somebody in their family has gone through, and they need to get rid of it so that they don't pass it down to their children.
Right.
My own daughter's going
Right.
through that right now. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for her. Good for her. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
had a
She,
a past life regression, and I was hung by in a tree in like the 1800s or so. I pictured Little House on the Prairie when I see that scene again. But yeah, I was hung, and like you're saying, I have a fear of second floor, being on a second floor looking down. It doesn't mash, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. I still have a fear of being stabbed. I keep, every once in a while, I have a dream of somebody breaking in the house and stabbing me.
Mm.
And it's interesting because I don't know what it feels like to be stabbed. I mean, currently, but I have read that when you do get stabbed, you only feel it on your skin because your organs don't have that. Um, they don't have feeling sometimes.
The
They're not.
sensories.
Well, yeah, it's I actually heard
Mm.
this from a forensic pathologist who
Oh, well.
had said that, if somebody gets stabbed, they don't realize they're being stabbed. That's why so many people feel like they're being punched, and it turns out that they've been stabbed. So it's yeah, I don't want that to
Oh,
happen to
well.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me neither. Yeah, I do have like a that fear of being violently killed. Yeah.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sure it's from a past life,
So it's
but I haven't seen it yet.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if nothing traumatic physically ever happened to you about being attacked, then
Hmm.
how can you have that fear and kind of understand what it feels like if it hasn't happened in the past life?
Right.
It's
Right.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that's something that just it's so weird. Going through all of this, I get it now. But yeah, it's
Mhm.
really cool stuff. Dreams are awesome. Dreams are
Yeah.
awesome. You had some experiences with meeting up with angels. Can you talk about that?
Oh, wow. Yeah. A couple of times. Women on the road alone are usually pretty careful about what happens to them. So me being very young, this was back when I was in my mid 20s. I lived in the suburbs of Chicago, and I was selling like kind of like a Tupperware party kind of thing. I was one of the people that were selling this stuff. It's called Coppercraft, and it was a division of Tupperware. So one of the parties I had was in the city, and I wasn't, even though I grew up in the city, I didn't grow up in that side of the city, so I didn't really understand the roadways. And I was going to have to drive all the way back out 40 miles outside of Chicago. And back then they didn't have GPS. So this is in the olden days during the horse and cart, not really, but
Yeah.
um,
Not that far back.
yeah. So 8-cylinder cars with gas guzzlers, and so I left the party at somewhere around like 10:30 at night, and it's dark. Good thing it wasn't winter, it was summer, so I was kind of glad about that. And I'm driving along and I'm like, they told me how to get to the East-West Tollway, but I can't remember that because I didn't write it down. So I got off on one of these streets, and now I live on this side of the city. That's where it happened. I know this street now because I live right off of it. But I got off the expressway and I'm driving along and it's deserted. It's late at night. There's nobody around. I didn't think it was a great part of town. But there's this guy who's in a business suit walking along in this deserted kind of area on the sidewalk, carrying a briefcase and not even thinking about it. I rolled down my window and I pulled over to the side. I said, "Hey, can you help me?" And he said, "Sure." And he comes over and he's leaning in my car, which you're not supposed to let men do because you're alone.
Hmm.
And I said, "Can you tell me how to get back to the East West Tollway?" He goes, "Sure, you take this." And then he told me how to do that. I was like, "Well, thanks." And I got back on the expressway and got home in like, it was about an hour. And after I got home, I was like, it was really stupid to do that. And then, and it didn't even occur to me to even think about it. And I didn't tell,
Hmm.
I was married at the time and had small children. And I didn't even tell my husband about it. I just got home, went to bed, and that was it. And then several years later, I was looking for a job and I had to drive into the city again. And on the way back from my interviews, I hit a big pothole. And on the way home, I was still living in the same suburb. And on the way home, this 18-wheeler was driving and he kept pointing to my tire. So when I hit the pothole, it must have hit, took my tire
Oh,
off the rim or something. And I'm in on the express, I'm on the tollway with,
oh my
just
goodness.
cars going back and forth. I pull over and he stops behind me. And of course, the story's going back and forth in my head. And he comes up and he goes, I'm going to change your tire for you. He says, you can stay in your car if you want to, but I'm going to help you. And I was like 5 minutes from home. I thought, oh my God, maybe I can just drive my car home. But he changed my tire. He sent me on my way. And years later, I realized that these people were angels. These people were, I believe that these two men were angels. And I've run into this a few other times in my life where I put myself kind of stupidly in a situation where I could have really been hurt.
Yeah,
And because,
definitely.
and these days I'm more careful because of what's going on in the world. But I mean, a woman alone, and you don't realize, thank goodness that second one happened during the day because it could have been worse for me. But
Yeah.
I know that these two men were angels and they wanted nothing from me except to help me. And I even asked the guy, I said, can I pay you? And he goes, no. He says, I have daughters. I know what this is like. He said, I want to make sure you're okay. I was like,
Oh,
okay.
how
So
sweet.
yeah,
How
I
sweet.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really awesome. I had an angel help me out on my way into work. I was gonna head straight from the intersection there, and I heard this voice, you need to turn and get gas there at this gas station. I'm like, oh. And the arguing goes on, no, I'm not. Yes, you do. No, I'm not. And then all of a sudden, I felt my steering wheel moving, and my car went into the turning lane on its own. And I, what else could I do? I guess I'm getting gas. And sure enough, when I got to just about to work, there was an accident right there. And had I not have gotten gas, I probably would have been involved.
Yeah, yeah. I
Be
think that we
amazing.
are, yeah, there are angels watching out for us because I'm sure I've done other things. Nothing comes to mind, but I'm sure I put myself in other situations where, and I'm not a stupid person. That's the whole thing. I'm pretty common. I use my common sense like 99% of the time, but, and I never think I'm infallible or invulnerable, but you just never know what you can run into. And I always want to believe in the goodness of people. Although these days you're kind of like not so sure about some people,
Right.
but you always want to believe in the goodness of people.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, those of us who do believe in that are the ones that we get help from angels that are disguised as people who step in and
Yeah.
help us. And
Yeah.
I've done that for other people too. Maybe somebody thinks I'm an angel because I helped the old lady who, couldn't drive
See?
her car and I helped her drive her car back to a parking garage so she could call her daughter. And I always
Oh,
think about her and wonder, well, maybe she was an angel who taught me a lesson. I don't know. You never
yeah.
know.
You never know. You never
Mm.
know. And
Mm.
that's the
Yeah.
joy of all of this because you don't know these things. And when they happen, it's just
Yeah.
so amazing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
You're right.
you get speechless with it. At least I do. I mean, it's like, this is so awesome. How do you even explain this to somebody? How?
Yeah.
Because it's just,
I think it's just our heart tells us we have that when you meet somebody, you're instantly connected to them because we are all connected energetically. Sometimes some of us are connected um, more closely with others. Why was my mom and my daughter, why were they so close? And when my mother passed, the night that she passed, she was in the hospital for about a month. And she came home on a Monday. And I was on the phone with my cousin in California, my mother's sister's son. And he was asking me how she was. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go see her on Friday because I had just seen her on Sunday and I knew she was going home on Monday. And she was pretty lucid. And I won't tell you the whole story about her illness, what happened to her, but by the month end, she was lucid and she knew who everybody was. She knew who the president was, and that was Reagan. So you know how long ago this was. And I was on the phone with my cousin, and I said, yeah, I'm going to go see her. And like 10 minutes later, my younger brother calls and he says, Mom just passed. I'm going over to help Dad. And I was like, no, I kind of knew, but I didn't expect it until I was able to see her to really have a conversation, maybe have a conversation with her. So I went to tell my kids, and my daughter, she was 13 at the time, and she comes downstairs and she said, Grandma just came to say goodbye to me. I was like, oh, okay. And she and my mom were, and that's why my mom was with her, because she was looking out for my daughter. But they were so close that my mother, she only said goodbye to my daughter. And my son was clueless. He had no idea. He didn't know what was going on. But yeah, I really believe that there is something out there that keeps their eyes on us.
Yeah. And that kind of happened with us when my mom passed just over a year ago. Um, my brother was in the room when because she was on pretty much life support. And so my brother was in the room holding her hand when they took it off. And when they took everything off, he got this feeling to look up in the corner of the room, and he got to see the sparkly tunnel, and he got to see mom walking. And then she turns around and says, I'm okay. It's all good. And then she turned around and she was gone. And it's like, actually, that interview was on my podcast. So, um,
Oh,
it's episode 7, I believe it is. It's with my brother, and he'll tell that story. It was really cool, really sweet.
yeah,
And I know he was the one that was meant to see that, because it's going to help him out. And we
right.
knew, my one sister and I knew about all of this, so we were good with it. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
amazing.
It is
It's
amazing. And
amazing.
this friend that I told you about that he talked me through past life regression. We went out to dinner with him, and my daughter, I asked, because I was living in Pittsburgh at the time and she was going to school at the same place I was working at. So she and I were, I don't remember if she was living with me or she was just living in the apartment with her friends, but we went out to dinner and we invited her. I'm sorry. And she shows up and it's the first time she met him. His name is John. And he looks at her and he said, is that your grandmother behind you? Because he could see people.
So
And
cool.
she was like, probably. And he goes, well, you know what? She laughs at you a lot. And my daughter's like, yeah, there's times when I'm in the shower and then she just laughs at me and I know she's laughing at something that I did. So yeah, my mom, that's how the relationship they had together was a very bright I think of it as bright, a bright relationship where, my mom just absolutely adored her. She called her Dolly. And I think she was the grandchild my mother, I don't want to say loved the most, but was closest to, because she was the first and she was a girl. And I think that my mom, she was excited about being a grandma. And so, yeah, so I think that that relationship was a really special one for my daughter.
Yeah,
And yeah,
that's
but,
really cool.
but my friends seeing my mother behind my daughter, like, yeah, she's laughing at you. Like, I said, this is nothing new. I hear about this all the time.
That's good.
Yeah.
I didn't want to scare anybody off with saying, "Oh, I see your grandma behind you." Yeah,
No, no, no. She was
crazy.
there all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you've done Reiki.
Mhm.
So, how did you get going with Reiki? I mean, except you did talk about your friend saying that you had some
Mhm.
very strong hands and healing.
Yeah. So he actually said that I have healing hands. And I never thought about it. I never wanted to go into medicine. My mom was a nurse for many years. My aunt was a nurse. And I knew a lot of people in the medical field. I paid medical claims. It was like I never wanted to be a nurse or a doctor because I just didn't. And And so when my friend John mentioned this, a couple of us got together and we went to New York because he told a couple of other people in this group that they could try it out. And know what he told them privately, but I know what he told me. So we went to a Reiki master teacher and we were attuned to first and second level. So second level means that I can do distance Reiki. So if you and I had a Reiki session going, I could do a Reiki session with you. I use a surrogate, which is a little stuffed animal, to do hand placement because I don't believe in sticking my hands on the screen. Um, so I did that, and I did it on all kinds of friends. And I think I charged one person to do it. It was a stranger, and a friend of hers had pointed her to me, and I just charged one person. And then I put it away because life got in the way. And, you put things that are least important in the survival mode that a lot of people are in, because I was in survival mode for many years. And then back in 2019, before the COVID hit, I was laid off for the fifth time from my job. And I decided that I would take my coaching experience in the corporate world and move it to the private world because I'm an empowerment coach. And one of the mentors that I had asked me what made me unique. And I said, I have no idea. And she said, well, is there anything else, other practices that you do? And I said, well, I am a Reiki practitioner, which never leaves you. Once you're attuned for life. And she said, why don't you incorporate that into your coaching? And I said, well, that's a good idea because when you use Reiki on somebody, it balances the chakras. And if your chakras are not balanced, then your mental health may be affected, your physical health might be affected. Anything could be affected. And when you balance the chakras, it helps healing because the body can heal itself. It just can't heal itself without help. And so I decided to use that as part of my toolbox that I have as a coach.
Nice.
So
Nice.
yeah, so I can do that separately or I can do it within my program. It's just, about halfway through a coaching program, somebody might say, I don't like this. I feel strange things are happening. Well, that's because they're scared, and Reiki can help them calm the amygdala, which is the fight, flight, or fawn or freeze, and they can get over that hump and continue on the journey of healing. So that's what I use it for.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
That's a great way to end the show because, our time is up or close. But thank you so much for being on the show. I really
Oh, you're
had a blast listening to your stories. I mean, every story is so amazing to me. I just like, with every story.
welcome.
It's so
Yeah,
cool for me. But
yeah.
thank you. Thank you for being here with us.
You're welcome, Dana. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, if anybody out there has a story that you would like to share, email lighttalk423@gmail.com. And while you're at it, click on the like, share, and the subscribe buttons down below. And I think this is going to be it. So we will
Okay,
see everybody next time. Bye.
bye.